Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to Hail Yes, the Detroit Free Press podcast about University of Michigan athletics. I'm Tony Garcia, Michigan football and basketball writer for The Free, joined as always by our Big Ten insider, Reiner Saban, the one of us who was on hand this weekend for Michigan's first loss in quite some time, 31-12 to Texas. That's what we're going to be getting into today. Looking at what's gone wrong so far, maybe some reasons, talk about a fantastic column that Reiner just wrote, and then sort of spinning it forward just with a, I don't know if it's a worryometer or a worry-o-meter, but one of those two. Which way do you lean, Reiner? Is it worryometer or worry-o-meter?
I think worry-o-meter. I like the breaking up of the syllables.
It feels very cartoonish, right? Like when you say I don't know, like it just feels like something can be on SpongeBob. The worry-o-meter.
Why not just worry meter? Do we need the O? Can we just go worry meter?
He's such an editor. Concise. Yeah. Look at this guy. Concise. But everything, like, I'm not. I feel like I didn't make that phrase up, right? Like it's like a thermometer, a worryometer. I think that's where that comes in. But in any event, we're assessing our level of worry. Is that fair? Is that what we're going to be doing?
I think we're good on that end.
Okay, excellent. Glad we've got that straightened out. Of course, the last voice you just heard, the third voice, I should say, was Andrew Burkle, our editor and producer, who is doing a whole lot of both of those right now. So maybe a little less from him. We will ping him should we need him during this episode. All right, Reiner, Michigan versus Texas. General thoughts. I believe it starts at third down woes, turnovers, and just a general lack of complementary football. I have since watched the game back. As our faithful listeners know, I was at my sister's wedding, the first game I've missed in a number of years, but we're back. I saw the game. Woof, not great. Your thoughts?
To quote Clubber Lang, pain. That was ugly. That was really ugly. Yeah, I don't think, based on what we watched, Michigan fans were expecting that. But there were signs that this kind of performance was probably coming against this kind of team. Texas is a complete team. Michigan is not. They have a malfunctioning offense, and their defense so far is getting hung out to dry a little bit by the offense, but they're also a kind of a feast or famine defense with the aggressive play calling of Wink Martindale, and it got exposed against Steve Sarkisian, who's a great manipulator of defenses and kind of a great, schematic coordinator in the sense that he'll find something, he'll find your weakness and choose to exploit it. And he did that by making the defense run sideline to sideline in the first half and tiring them out. 3 scoring drives of 10 plays or more in the first half. I mean, that caused the defense to break down and get extremely fatigued over the course of the first half.
Not to mention a touchdown called back, a missed field goal, right? So there were, you're totally right. It was lengthy. Because it all works together, the offense, the defense, we could always be looking at all of it. But I think we're going to try to isolate a little bit, look at the offense, look at the defense, sort of what's going wrong with both of those things. And it has to start with the offense, because obviously the defense was not great against Texas, but they were put in some tough situations. They were on the field constantly. And that's because the offense was not able to sustain drives, right? If you look back at the numbers, 3 for 12 on third down. And by the time they were into the game at the half, they're down 3 scores at the half. They had 80 some yards of offense in the first half. And for the second straight game, Reiner, fewer than 40 rushing yards at the half. I believe they had 39 this time. In their first 2 halves of football this year, they have 75 rushing yards. When you're not running early and you're not establishing a run, they have not been able to get the play action game going. Kirk Campbell said it on Inside Michigan Football. Sharon Moore said it when we talked to him on Monday as well. This is, even though it hasn't looked like it, the idea of this team is it's the same philosophy. It's the same identity. Yes, it's supposed to be a balanced offense, but it is a run-first attack. You got to get going downhill. You got to start softening up the underbelly of that defense. And then once you do it, then you spread it wide. You start throwing some screen passes. You get Samaj Morgan involved once they're starting to pass the box. And then once they're ready for that, that's when you go over the top. And there may be some concern if Michigan's even able to do that. But you can't even think about doing that unless you start running the rock, and they haven't done that at all.
No, they haven't. They had one drive in the first half that lasted longer than 1 minute and 41 seconds. That's not good, especially for an offense that really leans on time of possession as a recipe for success. So they were outpossessed in that first half by close to 9 minutes. And that was really the difference. Again, when the defense is hung out to dry the way that it is, they're just not going to have success. I mean, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham in that game played 118 snaps combined. That's 35 more than they played at any point last season. They're already being taxed, and this is week 2. It doesn't bode well for the rest of the season, and I think that's a real source of concern going forward beyond this game. I think it's going to really rear its ugly head come November.
Yeah, it could. It well could. And perhaps, if I guess for those, I don't know if anyone's listening for the first time. If you are, thank you. But while this may sound like revisionist history, right? Like we are using the Texas game to say these things, Reiner, and even I'd like to say myself to a certain extent, have been preaching a lot of these potential pitfalls, right? Areas of concern since the offseason when things were not addressed. Not bringing in a quarterback to replace J.J. McCarthy. You got a top 10 NFL guy who's leaving, and you know it, and you know you're next. They kind of think Jaden Davis is the future, but he's not ready. He's a true freshman, very raw. There was no supplementary plan or break glass plan in case JJ did not stay for that senior year, which is what happens. And to not bring in anyone via the portal feels like malpractice. Now, there has been, I guess, I don't know if the word is excuse or reason or what have you, but the rationale for why Michigan was unable to do that from some is they played too deep into the season, right? They were in the Rose Bowl. They were in the national championship game. They were focusing so much, as they should, on that they couldn't, I mean, they weren't paying attention elsewhere, what have you. And now that may be true, but what about the fact that, I mean, Cam Ward transferred to Miami after the Natty. Austin Mack went to Bama after the Natty. Jaden Rashada went to Georgia in April.
That was the one quarterback that conceivably would have been an answer that after the spring, if they were really thinking about that. I don't know what the talk was as it related to Rashada, whether they saw him as a fit, but he was the best available at that time by far. Pretty much the guys that were left post-spring were kind of the 3-star variety, the guys that, honestly played for Michigan State last year, like the Noah Kims and Keenan Hauser, although those guys were already picked up by that time. But that's the caliber of quarterback that was available post-spring. So they didn't really have great options post-spring. The question is that, they brought back Jack Tuttle. I think that was, again, a person that they were kind of hoping might be available. I mean, certainly he had probably the best credentials of the rest of the guys, even though they weren't great. And he was in his 7th year, but he's not reliable from a health standpoint. And we've seen that now. I mean, he was out the first game, questionable this game, didn't play, of course. And he's just unreliable from an availability standpoint. So, yeah, I think they really didn't have a great plan when it came to the quarterback. And it's not like Sherrone Moore and Kirk Campbell weren't here. They were. I mean, they were on Harbaugh's staff. So they had some agency in this.
They were the quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator of his staff, right? I mean, the two prominent offensive minds of that side of the ball. I agree. The excuses are few and far between for not being more prepared. Now, what I will say is harping on this quarterback thing just a little longer, there is still, I don't know if it's because they feel they have to or if it's genuine, there still seems to be some internal confidence in Davis Warren. And the idea being, here's, I guess, the way to put it. They feel if Davis Warren was quarterbacking last year's team, they'd be totally fine. They would not, would they win the national championship? I don't know if they feel that, but they think that they would win pretty much every game because everything else was insulated. They had an offensive line they could trust. They had 2 senior receivers who knew the right route depths, who knew to cut in front of a safety when you're running a crossing route and not run behind him so it can get picked. Just more reliable pieces. You had Blake Corum, the guy you knew write him down for 100 and a touchdown every game. They just had so many things that they didn't have this year. And has Davis Warren looked great? No. But is it all his fault? Also, no. I'd like to, and that's when I want to bring in sort of the idea of what you wrote about this morning, Reiner, and just a lot of this you could have seen coming. I don't think it's not revisionist history when you and we said it all offseason, right? I mean,
I wrote that Colston Loveland was pretty much the only receiving option, and he was going to likely lead the Michigan in receiving, and he was going to be by far the top target for a number of reasons. One, he was the lone returning starter. Two, the receivers are all, somewhat small, and when you're breaking in a new quarterback, not big targets. So, and there was questions about whether they could gain separation anyway off of any kind of press coverage or anything like that. So I mentioned that, but that also goes to, again, Kirk Campbell after the spring saying there are more explosive players on this team than in previous ones, and also said that he thought that they were going to be an explosive offense. I don't know why the coaching staff felt the need to kind of sell this line of thinking when they could have just as easily tempered expectations and said that, hey, it's a work in progress. We're replacing 10 of 11 starters. No shame in that. But they set themselves up for failure, essentially, and unrealistic expectations on the fan base's standpoint. And now they're getting called out for it. And they look foolish in retrospect.
Yeah. And someone who fits that mold, exactly, I think. I'm sure, we've had fine interactions with him. He's a good young man. Hopefully good things are ahead for him. But it's a guy like Amarion Walker, right? I mean, he's gone from offense to defense to the portal, back to offense. That's not adding a receiver. He was not, respectfully, he was non-functional here. It's why he left. They were moving in both sides of the ball. They could not find a place for him. You can't say, oh, yeah, we added a speedy receiver in Amarion Walker. Give me a break. That's not an addition. And it's just, in the same way you were talking about Colston Loveland, I'd like to think I have been hammering the Kalel Mullings train for some time and the issues with Donovan Edwards and how he is not the focal back or the style that Michigan needs. And what was Kirk Campbell? What was Schromer? What were they talking about ad nauseum yesterday? The only way this thing is going to get fixed is if they start getting back in third and manageables. And that starts with the run game on first down, on second down, getting into third and fours or shorter so you can pass or run. 4 of their 12 third down plays this last weekend were 3rd and 10 or farther. There's no hope with this offense.
Somebody asked Jerome Moore about the offensive line. He's like, oh, we're always going to be good up front. Well, they're not good up front. The center, and right tackle positions are particularly weak. And those were issues the whole offseason. The fact is that Evan Link, honestly, he was a surprise starter at right tackle. A lot of people thought
I had him 3rd entering the season. I had him 3rd at that spot.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then you had, Dominic, Gadis as the starting center when a lot of people thought it was going to be Crippen and Raheem Anderson throughout the whole offseason. And so it just goes to show you that maybe they didn't have the pieces that they thought they did. And are they seeing things in practice, or are they able to make the right evaluations? And judging by the fact that Kirk Campbell thought that this thing was going to be explosive, when they rank 122nd in the country in plays of 10 or more yards, 122nd, they're behind Iowa, they're behind Michigan State. And Michigan State, again, now looks a hell of a lot more explosive than Michigan does right now. If you watch that Maryland game, it's not even close.
Which is such a wild concept when you think about just November, where these 49-0. You remember what that was one of the biggest bludgeonings I have ever seen on a football field last year. And now there's still time. Michigan can figure it out. Correct me if I'm wrong. We're getting ahead of ourselves. I'm kind of anticipating a game. That was a win. That was written off as a win. I think I'm probably still thinking they win that game, but I got to see more against USC. I got to see them start getting it together against Arkansas State.
Yeah, and what did MSU do? They got a transfer quarterback. They've got a real receiver.
They got a lot of transfers, and sometimes I don't think you're making and losing argument if anyone's trying to sell Michigan State over Michigan in general, especially where they were just in January. But sometimes, if you think about just what's happened since then, right? One coaching staff all the way out, graduating all their players, whereas another roster, yes, they lost some pieces from the old thing. They got to, also with the benefit of the year of the Pac-12 wiping, they got to combine forces with that Oregon State roster, right? And then that really, I think, expedited that rebuild in East Lansing for what it's worth. But back to Michigan, here's my question. What's their identity? What is this year's team identity? I know what Michigan's identity is in general, but what does this team do? I don't know yet.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know what they do well, particularly right now. And so that's, besides kicked field goals, they
kick field goals really well. They're excellent at kicking field goals.
You got an excellent field goal kicker. Awesome.
Yeah. That's where Michigan State's been, right? The last couple of years. They had Noah Kim, or not Noah Kim.
No, Jonathan
Kim. Sorry. Not my team. Jonathan Kim and Ryan Eckley at punter, right? And that's what they're hanging their hat on. Just random special, like your punter is your best player. Like Torrey Taylor's was at Iowa for 3 years. You kind of know what's happening. No joke. Dominic Zavada might have been the best performer through 2 weeks.
No, there's no doubt about it. He is the best performer, and that's pretty clear. He's come through every time, and kicks some big field goals. So, but yeah, they haven't done anything overly well in any capacity through the first 2 weeks, and obviously everything was particularly bad Saturday. But there are some issues on defense. Again, they gave up 124 yards in the fourth quarter against Fresno State. I asked Sharon more about it, whether he was worried about some of the leakage there and the stamina issue maybe of the defense, and he kind of brushed it. Well, they only had 9 rushing yards when you combine obviously the sack yardage. But again, it's like this a bit.
It's the signs. It's the signs that you need to read.
That they're just pushing aside or ignoring or just acting overconfident about everything with the program. And to me, that's the most troubling. I think the one thing you want with a coaching staff is to acknowledge reality. And there were real issues, and there should have been some acceptance of the potential for a backslide this year. And they should have been more quick to acknowledge that, yeah, we do need more reinforcements maybe in certain areas. They need more depth at defensive tackle. They maybe need more options on the offensive line besides Josh Freed.
On and on it goes, right? It feels like there's a lot of things. We've kind of seen this, right? We're all used to coach speak, and so nobody's expecting the full truth, the whole truth, right? I think we all can understand there's got to be a little bit of gray area, a little bit of leaving it up to interpretation. We got it. However, you said it. You have to be honest with yourself. Yeah, if you're not going to be honest with us is one thing, but if you're not honest with yourself, it will come on the field and show itself. Now, I think it's worth noting Texas might be the best team in the country. If not, number 2, number 3. That's one of the 3 or 4 best teams in America, I think, period. So it's not that they looked horrific against some nobody. That said, that wouldn't have happened in 23 or 22 or probably even 21. And that's the part that you really need to start talking about yourself, being honest with yourself about. And quickly, it seems, I wonder, I don't know if Sharon is maybe now starting to be honest, because here's what he said on Inside Michigan Football last night after you had asked him in the morning about if maybe they were, what was it, overconfident or sort of right? If they just had too much confidence in their roster and didn't properly evaluate. He said, no, we were not overconfident. To you, this is what he said on Inside Michigan Football. What we do on offense has to be simpler for them. We've got to help them out. This is a different group than last year and the year before, where you could practice a play, give them 1 rep, and if the left side got it, then the right side got it, just based on watching the left side do it. Whereas this group, they need all the reps to do it to be successful. So we need to make the packages smaller on offense, do things to bring out their strengths to be successful. That's a wildly different tone.
Yeah. Well, it's finally some acceptance there.
Which could be step 1. That could be step 1.
Again, yeah, acknowledging your problems is usually the first step in trying to correct them. That's honestly probably what led to Mel Tucker's downfall, even before the scandal happened. It was the fact that he constantly seemed to oh, I'll watch the tape or blaming execution. No, it was more than execution. There was real coaching fault. You saw with Jonathan Smith, who's been a program builder. I'm now referencing Michigan State again, but there's a lesson to be learned here. Jonathan Smith is in his 7th year as a head coach, 6 years as a program builder. And what did he do after the first game? They won the game, but he said like, oh, I made a mistake. What did Brian Lindgren, the offensive coordinator, who's been right beside Jonathan Smith's side, he said, oh, I should have gotten Aiden Childs in the rhythm. You know what that does? That says to the players like, hey, we're making mistakes, but we're admitting fault, but we're acknowledging them and we're going to correct them. And so that tells to the players that, hey, it's okay to admit fault and make a mistake as long as you correct them. And that's the first step toward being a successful football program, in my opinion. And getting things right is being able to say, hey, we made a mistake. We're going to correct it.
And I wonder if, I don't know if this is wrong, maybe it had just been that long. I mean, obviously Michigan's far from perfect. It had been a long time since it felt like they'd made a mistake, right? I mean, it just felt like in the last years under Harbaugh, they sure as believe were not going to beat themselves, right? I mean, there's no turnovers, there's no penalties. They're going to be sound, and you have to play your absolute best. Anything short of it, no chance. Now, Texas could have won that game if they played their D+ game. You know what I mean?
Well, and they could have easily put on a lot more points. I mean,
yeah, their drives were a touchdown taken off the board, then touchdown, field goal, touchdown, punt, touchdown, and then it was going into the fourth, and they just kind of took their foot off the gas. Andrew.
Tony, something you said kind of stuck out to me, and then it came back up, so I wanted to bring it up. You mentioned the 2021 team, but if that team it took a little while to get in rhythm back in 2021, maybe that those 2022 and 2023 teams were kind of more the outlier. This team Michigan got destroyed by Georgia at the end of that season, and they were playing good football by the end of that year. Maybe this team is just closer to that 2021 team, and we're all overreacting a little bit. Is that possible?
Oh, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. 22 and 23 are absolutely the outlier by every measure you can ever look at Michigan football with. They had never won 13 games, which they did in 22, and then they'd never won 15 games, which they did in 23. That national championship, their first outright since 2 or 3 years after the Second World War. There's been there's like some dysmorphia about what people think Michigan is. It is not 11-1, 12-0 every year. This is a 9-3 program that is 10-2, 9-3, somewhere in there. If you're below that, it's a bad year. If you're 10-2, it's right around where you should be, and everything above that is great. A 41-3 stretch had never happened. Michigan had never won 3 consecutive outright Big Ten titles in 125 years, right? So, and I was trying to say it all offseason. Expectations always had to be ramped back. However, this looks to me worse than, and Reiner was there, so he can speak to it even better. This looks worse than some of those 9-3, 10-3 Jim Harbaugh teams. Right now.
I think so, in the sense that, yeah, they also committed some fatal errors. I mean, again, the best Harbaugh teams don't commit mistakes. They don't commit penalties. Kirk Campbell's talking about a false start early on, putting them back, behind the chains as of one of the examples of them being in, third and unmanageable situations and staying ahead of the chains. So the penalties and the turnovers, they all kind of accumulate and create this kind of impression that, things are kind of going off the rails a little bit. And that's kind of how it felt, especially when Loveland kicked the ball away in the second quarter there. And that was kind of that was the moment when everybody's like, ooh, yeah, I think this Michigan team is not up to par of what we're used to, which was, again, extremely good fundamental execution.
That's what I was going to say, right? I mean, they had set such a high bar, right, Andrew?
Yeah, and Loveland's still carrying that bar himself for the most part. I mean, he's one of the few players who you could say has been holding himself up to that expectation and delivering, at least on game day. You don't see behind the ball. You don't see what kind of leadership skills he's displaying or if he's able to hold the other people accountable as well. But real quick, I just want to tie a bow on this. 2021, Michigan, let's take a look back real quick at kind of their schedule and compare it, because I think maybe that is kind of the bar that Michigan fans should be hoping for this year. So they open up with Western, destroy them, beat a really bad, Washington team 31-10. Then they destroyed Northern Illinois, but only beat Rutgers by a touchdown at home in September. So they finished.
That was a very close game, by the way, and was really, Rutgers was very much in danger of tying that game and overtaking them in that fourth quarter. What was interesting about that was that a lot of people wrote Michigan off at that point, thinking that, they were going to go on the road the next week against Wisconsin and lose that because they were underdogs in that game. And that was the seminal moment really for Michigan, and the turnaround moment for Michigan that really launched them to where they were, by the time they raised the trophy in Houston. They went on the road and kicked, Wisconsin's butt by 21 points, 38-17. And
that might have been Harbaugh's first win as an underdog.
That was
right. Yeah.
And there was a lot of firsts with that win, and that really kind of changed everything. That was when you really got the sense that this might actually be a team that could do something. And then they lost to Michigan State eventually later that month, and then people started like, well, they still haven't gotten over the hump when it relates to the rivals. And then of course you had the Ohio State victory at the end of the season, but that Wisconsin game was a big bellwether game for this program.
So it's interesting because, looking back on it now, maybe this Michigan team isn't all that much different than the 2021 team, because the Wisconsin win, while impressive and in program defining, Wisconsin was 1-3 after that game.
Right.
So they were not exactly a powerhouse. So you beat Wisconsin, then the schedule breaks right for you. It's not that good of a Penn State team that year. They barely beat Nebraska by 3 points, 32-29. Then you beat Northwestern, lose to Michigan State, then crush Indiana, beat the Penn State team by 4, like I mentioned. You beat Maryland, and then you win essentially a coin flip game against Ohio State. To compare the schedule to Michigan's schedule this year, it's night and day. So maybe this team isn't really that much different than 2021, and the schedule is tougher, and the wheels can fall off.
It's possible. It's entirely possible. Of course, that feels like the ceiling, right? But it's also, we've said it. These have been 2 tough games. Fresno State, Texas. That's a tough start. It's much different than years past. They're about to shellac Arkansas State, and who knows? Maybe then when USC has to travel this way, if Michigan can peel off that USC game and they're 3-1, everything feels real different, right? But now, where Texas was that early barometer, I think we got we see the temperature in the room. We feel the temperature in the room. Now USC is that next one. And that's when you'll really see, I think, which way the season goes. And with that, we will take a break. And on the other side is when we begin our worry meter, worryometer, worry-o-meter, and discuss which of these problems we think can be fixed, which maybe not. Don't go anywhere. This is Hell Yes. All right, we are back with the meter of worry, measuring our concern level with various position groups within the University of Michigan football team. Reiner, 1 means there is no concern. It might as well be 2023 national championship caliber position group. 10 is complete panic. 2020 COVID season, 2-4, dumpster fire. All right, are you ready? Quarterback, go.
I would say about an 8. Yeah. It's pretty serious. The fact is that Davis Warren has thrown for 161 plus point yards per game, which ranks 18th out of 18 Big Ten starters. So Michigan having the worst passing yardage quarterback in the Big Ten a year after their national championship, not good.
Not good. I would agree. I'm going to put it just a tick below. I'm going to go 7. And the reason is because I feel Davis Warren, he still has his best ball ahead of him. Maybe that sounds cliche, but if the coaches do, especially this week, right, against an inferior opponent, but if Michigan actually starts insulating him a little bit more and really does commit to the run and the things that open up the pass game, I feel Davis Warren will not be the 18th out of 18 quarterbacks. Now, could he be 12 or 13? Absolutely. But I think there's a little more in this passing offense. So I'm going to put it at 7. We'll stay with the pass catchers before we go to the running game. How about that? In which I include tight ends and receivers.
Yeah, I'd probably put him at a 9. Yeah, I think it's a real issue. Granted, Colston Loveland has done a very good job for the most part, aside from that fumble and the drop pass against Fresno State. But the fact is they really don't have any outside skill players that are threats to a defense, and they've also been kind of unreliable, whether it's route running or sometimes even catching the football. Mostly route running. It just doesn't look good from that standpoint, and it was an issue going into the season we all knew about, and it's only been affirmed in these last 2 games.
It has. I kind of said it in the offseason. If you're calling, quote unquote, the alpha in your room, somebody who has 1 career touchdown, which was Tyler Morris, that's a concern, right? It's a big concern. Samaj Morgan, if anyone who's read and listened, I still like Samaj Morgan's game a lot. It's Steve Smith Sr. but he's not Steve Smith Sr. just yet. He's just, you want to see him attack the ball a little more. It hasn't made a lot of people miss in the screen game, and that's another element. How about wide receiver block? I think Cornelius Johnson is missed in a big way when you're talking about getting things going on the outside. The way they used to block downfield last year, even Roman Wilson, undersized, but took pride in it. I'm not saying these guys don't, but I'm saying they've not done as well. So I'm right with you at a 9. I don't know who the deep play guy is outside of Loveland. Loveland is the reason this is not 10, right? Loveland brings this down a full point. But who's the deep play guy? Who's the jump ball receiver? Who is the one other than Loveland who 3rd and 6? Say Loveland is bracketed, right? Who's running the slant and who's diving? Who's catching the ball with his hands, not just his body? I was expecting a lot more from Fred Moore. I think I had him as maybe my breakout player on offense. Great call, Tony. I think he's played 5 snaps or thereabouts. My understanding is he's just not comprehending the offense because they need playmakers, right? They need people who can do it. But if you're not in the right position, if coaches can't trust you to be running the right routes, that's why interception number 2 happened on Texas, then you're just not going to see the field. Running backs.
Yeah.
Obviously, Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings has not gone well early. Do you see that going up, going down?
Well, I think that's a 6 or 7, and I think you agree with that. The idea that, again, that they were putting their hopes on Donovan Edwards as being this kind of lead back, and it just really hasn't come to fruition. And then you should be relying on Khalil Mullings. The question with Donovan Edwards is going forward, how else are they going to use them? Why are they so set on using him as just a pure running back? Why not line him up in the slot, especially given your pass catching problems? He is a good pass catcher. He really does have good hands and can make some plays in space. And so I think that's the question. But as it pertains to the running backs, I think they need to maybe look at Ben Hall, maybe some of these other guys, see what's going on there. Because sometimes it's also about reading the hole and reading the blocking. And maybe these guys just do it better than Donovan Edwards does on a down-to-down basis. But you can't keep going at this rate and expect to be in third and manageables. I think he's unreliable from that standpoint. I just don't think you can rely on him on the early downs as much.
10 of his 19 runs have gone for 3 yards or fewer, and some of those are negative, right? That means more than half the time, if you give him the ball on offense on first down, you're looking at 2nd and 7 or worse. More than half the time, that's not going to cut it. But and I think it's why we're gonna see the flip. I think what you're saying is I'd be doing it too. I'd be looking to get Khalil the ball more. I'd be looking to get Ben Hall the ball more. And Donovan they showed a couple of 2-back sets. You can still keep him in the game. Flex him to the slot and get him in man coverage on a linebacker for the love of God. Just find a way to do it. It's not that hard, right? If Kirk Campbell is half the offensive coordinator he claims to be, you can scheme your guys open. And scheming him open is not running Donovan in the A gap. It's not. That's not going to work. We've seen it. And so, but the reason I'm at a 6 is because I believe there's still talent in this room. And I think there's enough, you can move things around. stop. I mean, you have to put people in position to be successful. Donovan Edwards is not going to be successful if he's a center and he's blocking, right? He's not going to be a great defensive back. Maybe the running back is only so-so. You got to start putting him where he is going to be successful. How about, obviously, the offensive line? That was an exaggeration. It was just kind of for dramatic effect. Just people got to be in the right places. And speaking of the offensive line, I could see this one being pretty high as well. Reiner, worry?
Yeah, 8, because they're not particularly good at run blocking. They've been pretty good at pass blocking, surprisingly, but for some reason, they're not able to generate push on a down-to-down basis again, especially early in the games. It's part of the reason why you're seeing these issues. Plus, they've had some, penalties that have kind of hurt them. Last year, they were part of a team that had the fewest penalties per game in the country. So, yeah, it's not the same, and we didn't expect it to be the same. But they have really some issues, particularly at the right tackle spot and center. And those issues, I don't know if they're going to resolve themselves by the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm right about the same level. I had 7, maybe 7.5. You wonder if it's time to give Andrew Gentry a look at right tackle, maybe see what Greg Crippen or someone could bring at center. I think they're gonna. It is tough. You don't want to have a full sail change just because of one bad game, but you do need to be honest with yourself. It's that fine line in between, and so very clearly this is not the line of years past. And I think you've nailed the 2 positions, center and right tackle, between Evan Link and Dom Gadis. I think we would have thought the top 4 people at those positions were Gentry, Percy, Crippen, and Anderson. And if those 4 are not playing, something's gone wrong in the development. All of those guys have been here for years. They're all upperclassmen. And for none of them to just push their way onto the field when things are going like this, kind of telling in my eyes. And it is just hard to believe what they were telling us all offseason. The offense was beating the defense at times in practice. I just don't see it at all. Speaking of the defense, D-line, we're going to go a little quicker on these.
Yeah, probably 3. It's a concern in the sense that they don't have as much depth, and we talked about that ad nauseum about the snap counts and being inflated. I mean, Kenneth Grant is not nearly as effective as he was last year. I mean, and I have to think that has something to do with the snap count. However, they're still getting some decent pressure from the edges with, Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart. Still like those players. The question is how much stamina will they have towards the end of the season, and whether they can develop some guys behind them to be able to really go after the quarterback. So those are my concerns with the D-line. But, I mean, they're probably the best, position group that I've seen on this team outside of special teams.
I would agree. Rayshon Benny, performances like that week 1, I mean, you got to see more, right? We've heard about, Eto. We heard about Cam Brandt. They played. They haven't popped. Waiting on that TJ Guy, same thing. So, yeah, I'd like for this to be a little more exciting than us to be like one number apart on all of these, but we kind of just have the same read on this. I'd say 3, maybe 4, just because of KG. I'm just not sure what's going on with him. Very odd. This is going to be my highest level of concern on this side of the ball. How about those linebackers?
Yeah, I'd put it at a 7. I think they have real issues in pass coverage, and I think that's going to be a problem all season long. And this is going back even before to last year. I mean, Ernest Hausman, I think, is a liability in coverage. And now you're seeing some issues with Jason Barham. He gets caught up in the wash too much, and they're
sucked down on that play action.
And they're using him a lot to blitz and help with pressure, but he gets out of position real quickly, especially if they throw behind him or whatever. It just seems like, or over the top of him. And so, yeah, I think they've got some real issues at the inside linebacker position. I also don't think they have great depth there either. So should have wanted them to get hurt. I don't know what we'd see, and I think it'd be potentially pretty yikes for the defense.
I think it would be Jimmy Rolder. We've seen him step up a bit, which he's probably not the same level as Hausman or Barham, but they each have their limitations, right? Hausman, as you said, in pass coverage, I think he's limited a little bit athletically, and then Barham. I mean, it's just kind of an intellectual thing right now. It's it's a decision making thing. I think is actually the operative phrase that I'm looking for. He's capable of making all the plays on the field. He really is that level athlete. I mean, staying gap sound, eye discipline, which we have not seen from him and is just so important in that middle level. So I'd say,
but again, the coach is comparing him to Devin Bush and saying he's
not doing him favors.
Yeah, not doing any favors. I mean, and they set himself up to like, well, I mean, this guy's got to be amazing. And then we see that he's rated actually the worst player on defense by Pro Football Focus coming out of game 2.
And I think week 1, he was
against the lead opponent. And that's the type of player you expect if he's Devin Bush-like to take over a game against a ranked opponent like that. And he did the opposite, essentially.
In the secondary, there is a Devin Bush level, obviously a different position. We know Will Johnson is every bit as good as Devin Bush was, so nobody's overhyping him. How do you feel about the way the rest of the unit has rounded out? Will had a tough week 1, bounced back decently this last week, but Jair Hill seemed to get exposed a little bit.
Yeah, I would put it at a 6 or 5 because I think there were some communication issues, I think, there. And yeah, Jair Hill was picked on early and often by Steve Sarkisian. So he clearly saw that as a guy they could exploit. And then again, I think this is a game where you did miss Rod Moore in this on the back end. And so I think that's going to end up being a problem going forward because, again, who's coming to town in about 10 days or so? It's USC and Lincoln Riley. And Lincoln Riley is, again, not too different than Steve Sarkisian. He'll be able to scheme you open and do some things to attack that with Martindale defense, especially in the secondary. And they've talked a lot about this positionless defense. That's, again, why you would want somebody like Rod Moore back there because he can arrange things, see things pre-snap, maybe make the right adjustment. You have much more confidence, I think, having a guy back there organizing the defense, so to speak. The other thing is obviously the tackling. Not good enough, and their tackling in space has got to improve. So, yeah, I think that there's some issues in the secondary.
I'm just a tick below you. I'd put it at maybe a 4, 5. There are some communication issues in the secondary. Part of the reason it's not higher is there's hope Rod Moore can come back. If he does for the last month or so, let's say. I mean, I feel like you just don't know. You just don't know how capable he'll be. But if he could even give you a few snaps, just anything, right? And then you got other guys. You got Wesley Walker who's learning. You got Amir Hall who's learning. These guys I expect them to ascend, right? I expect them to be playing better in a couple weeks than they are now. This is still one of the deepest rooms on the team. Still one of the more talented rooms. I will go about 4. I'm not fully concerned about here yet. Maybe even 3.5. I still think they can. That this is one group that can piece it together, especially if they're not on the field for 68 plays a game, right? Like let's be on the field for 48 plays, and then this looks a lot different. It starts with the offense. Okay, I'm going to steal one first. Kicker, he's a 0. The concern level was 1 to 10. I'm throwing Dominic Zavada at a 0. Just unbelievable. And then quickly, I will also give my punter. I'm going to go a full 8 for Tommy Doman. I don't know who needs to hear this. Respect to Tommy Doman and his family. I know he's just in college. Tommy Doman is not a good punter. He's just not. There's no hang time, not a lot of direction, doesn't pin teams inside the 20. Frankly, does nothing well that the position asks for. 2 punts, on long of 36. It's not like they were backed up where he could only one step and kick it. Just inexcusable, frankly, for that position to look like this right now. So I'm at a 0 for the kicker and a full 8. Maybe 9. I'll go 9 for the punter.
I think that's fair. That's fair. I think that, I would agree with that. And I'm not concerned at all about kicker right now. Again, he's been a huge source of their points. So Dominic Zavada, I'm referring to Tommy Doman, has been an issue and is nowhere near what Brad Robbins was. So that's been a big drop off there and continues to be. So they're one of their big things at Michigan for when they were successful was field position, and he doesn't help you flip the field position very well. So not good.
Agreed. All right. That is our level of worry with every position. We're going to take one more quick break. Then on the way back, we're bringing in Andrew. And it's time for the picks. Don't go anywhere. This is Hail Yes. And we are back with the picks. And you know the man who takes us through that. It is less happy than the week before, Andrew Burkle.
I'm shaking my head. I don't know what happened. I completely lost the wheel. I lost all my college games. The only one I won was the fake Lions pick.
We're still counting that for the record.
And we're still counting it. And everyone got that. So it was basically a free point. So after 2 weeks, we're all tied. 5-4, 5-4, 5-4. So like we always do, let's start with Michigan versus Arkansas State. Tony, what are you seeing in this one here?
Man, well, Michigan, 23.5-point favorite. It feels very tough to see Michigan score 20. I mean, first they have to score 24 points, right? Then you see if they could score 24 or more points than the opponent. But I think this is actually the week they do. There are so much concern, as we just spent an hour talking about, over the offense, the lack of a run game, the lack of a pass game, no complementary pieces. Arkansas State is not a good team, right? They beat Tulsa. They probably should have lost to whoever was before, Central Arkansas, something or other, which is just, give me a break, right? Of course, the sky feels like it's falling after what happened against Texas, but this is the most manageable game on the entire schedule. I think Michigan they don't overwhelm, but they do enough. It looks kind of like it has in the last few years. And even think about it, even if it's like a Bowling Green game last year, say that 5 times fast, it was 31-6. That's still 25 points. And so something like that. We know Michigan, if they get in field goal range, as we just went over, they're going to get their 3. So I'll take Michigan to cover.
Yeah, I just was so troubled by what's going on with the offense that I just think that the execution may not be there. And the idea of the vulnerability being shown by Michigan registers with the team coming in, looking to give them trouble. And so I think they're going to have the confidence to be able to hang with Michigan early on. And I just think the spread is too large. So I'm going with Arkansas State.
In a perfect world, I'd like to get this up to 24, which you can do on your gambling app of choice. But I think I just don't trust Michigan's offense. That's basically what it is. 24 points to beat somebody by right now feels like a bit of a climb for Michigan. So I'm going to roll with Arkansas State in this one, despite their shaky open to the schedule. Butch Jones, their coach, by the way. Funny that after his time down in Tennessee, now he's coaching Arkansas State. So Gus Malzahn used to be the coach back in the day there too, didn't he, Ryder?
Oh, yeah. Hugh Freeze has been the coach there. Yeah, they've had Blake Anderson. They've had some really heavy hitters.
They're like the Central Michigan.
Yeah, Central Michigan or Boise State before, Boise State really got good. Boise State was cycling through up-and-coming coaches left and right for a while. Same with CMU, like you said. And Butch Jones has been both of them.
Both.
Yeah. Good call. Okay, yeah. This one, by the way, guys, the games this week, the spread of games, not that impressive. So Alabama playing at Wisconsin, despite being on the road, the Crimson Tide are a 15.5-point favorite. Almost fell to USF last weekend at home. So, Ryder, you think your old beat is going to take care of business at Wisconsin?
Well, I think Wisconsin basically Alabama does not cover it now. So I think they go up to Madison, and I think it's going to be tough based on what I saw from Alabama in week 2 against South Florida. That game was pretty close up until 5 minutes go into the fourth quarter, and things kind of went off the rails for South Florida after that. But South Florida was giving them a lot of trouble, and there's still some issues with execution on Jalen Milrow's part. So I think Mike Tressel is a good defensive coordinator, and so I think they'll be able to come up and scheme some things. Eventually, Alabama I think pulls away, but not by enough to cover.
Former Michigan State DC Mike Tressel, man, I'm just so torn on this one because let's not act like Wisconsin has looked good either, right? They needed a muff punt in week 1 by Western to flip the script and really pull away in that one. It's just 15.5 is kind of a lot. In order to cut if Wisconsin scores 17, like if they get 16, 17, then Alabama, they just got to score so many times. I just think that Wisconsin could just keep it just under this number, 13, 14. So I will go with Wisconsin as well.
Early season Bama, new administration, obviously, but the last few years have been a little shaky to start the seasons here. Wisconsin, that environment is going to be fired up. Big noon kickoff. I'm rolling with the Badgers. I don't really feel that great about it. I do think Alabama still finds a way to win. But it was pretty ugly for Bama last week against USF. Night game at home against the Bulls should be an easy one, and they didn't look great. So I'm going to roll with Wisconsin, and it's probably going to be a low-scoring game. I mean, look at the two Wisconsin scores so far, 28-14 and 27-13. I mean, if they can keep it in that ballpark, they should be fine and even lose by 14 and cover.
I just want the record to show I will stay with Wisconsin. We all just totally walked into this. Don't we all remember what happened last year after USF, and we all declared Nick Saban and Alabama dead? And then
what'd you just say? Nick Saban?
I said last year. I
don't think Nick Saban's on the sidelines anymore, though.
That's true. But Kalen DeBoer is a pretty good coach. Last day check.
I would say the one thing that scares me about Wisconsin, this speed on defense. That Ryan Williams kid is fast, and I think that Jalen Milroe, the one thing he does really well is throw the deep ball. So that would be the one reservation as it relates to Wisconsin, is the outside speed of Alabama. So just something to watch.
Never heard that one before.
Yeah,
Wisconsin having trouble matching Alabama speed on the outside. You don't say.
Yeah,
a keen observation. Let's go move on to Boston College traveling to Missouri. Maybe not a game you would have highlighted before the season, but BC's looked impressive, knocked off Florida State, and really is playing a smash mouth style of football. A 17-point underdog against number 6 Missouri. Tony, you got the SEC in this one, or the Michigan State's matchup for Week 4?
Yeah, I'm going with the classic ACC power, the Eagles, and not just because I was in Boston this last weekend. But don't call me Nick Castellanos, their quarterback. I mean, this guy can move. I watched some of that Florida State game, as you've all heard. My girlfriend's a Florida State alum. It was not fun watching that. He's just the type of guy that gives you fits, right? I mean, just extends the plays, just makes it happen. Let me tell you this. Missouri has shut out its first 2 opponents. They will not be shutting BC out. Now, I am expecting a lower scoring game, maybe limiting the possessions. But 17 points is a lot, once again. And BC this is not, I was going to say, don't get lost in the names, but Missouri's not some long power. But this is not the BC that's been 2-10, 3-9. I mean, Bill O'Brien is now the coach, right? I mean, they've got an offensive system. He's got a guy who he trusts to run it. I mean, to keep it within 3 possessions, I think they can do that.
Yeah, I expect Missouri to cover. I just feel like, again, the Tigers have incredible amount of skill weapons. I think they'll be able to get up early, and then it could just snowball from there. They just have too much firepower on offense. Drinkwitz has really done a good job with that program, and the schedule going forward is pretty easy for them, relatively speaking, in the SEC. So they have a good shot at actually maybe making the college football playoff this year. And so I think that they're going to keep that in mind. Again, obviously going into a game like this, BC's have kind of made themselves known that they're going to be challenging this year. So I think they're going to come really prepared. And we haven't even seen Luther Burden really take off. That dude is really, really good, the receiver. So I don't know if BC has anybody who can contain him. I think he's going to end up being a player in this game.
Well, I kind of tend to agree with you here, Renner. Boston College, you see the ranked opponents, and you think it'd be a little smaller spread than 17. But when you look at the similar matchup between Alabama and Wisconsin, Alabama's a 15-point favorite on the road. So yeah, I think Missouri is the class of the 2 teams here. So I'm going to roll with Missouri as well, even to cover as a 17-point favorite. So let's finish off with Purdue and Notre Dame, a game that the Fighting Irish coming off a game that a lot of Michigan fans probably got a bit of a laugh at, the Fighting Irish losing to Northern Illinois. So 28-point favorites last week. Can they cover as a 10-point favorite this week on the road at Purdue? Reiner, finish us off here.
Yeah, don't think that they cover. And I think Purdue, because the game is at West Lafayette, 10 points is a lot. And I just don't know. I mean, based on the offensive performance by Notre Dame, especially the first couple of weeks, not great. So, I mean, I think Purdue, one thing Ryan Walters does well, he's a good defensive coach. So don't forget he was the defensive coordinator at Illinois that almost pushed Michigan to the brink in 2022 before Jake Moody ended that game with a game-winning field goal, basically. So, and had to rescue them in that. So I think that Ryan Walters will be able to come up with enough to kind of keep that game tight.
Man, I kind of think so too. especially because Purdue didn't play this last week, right? Like, they played Indiana State week 1, and then they had a week off. So they've been preparing for this game for 2 weeks, right?
Well, season, honestly.
Yeah. Since the offseason. Yeah, they weren't circling Indiana State. It's a good point. And so, it's in West Lafayette, as you mentioned, the in-state rivalry with Notre Dame, the big brand coming in. But I just feel like everyone and their mother is going to be on Purdue after Notre Dame did a little poo-poo in their Betty Bye against NIU, right? And so, so it's just like so many people are getting like, just because that happened, it can swing back the other way. I'm looking for get right game here for Notre Dame, for Sam Hartman. I mean, they have to run the table to go to the college football playoff, I think, because it is not an impressive schedule. If they take another loss, I think they're done, especially without being in the conference. So this is a big spot for them. And 10 points is fewer than 17 and fewer than 15.5. So I'm not quite as scared about the cover. So I will take Notre Dame.
Yeah, but they scored 23 against A&M, and they already scored 14 against Northern Illinois.
I'm not saying I feel great about it. I don't feel great about it.
Riley looks lost out there. So I'm going to go with Purdue. Join Ryder on that one as well. Unfortunately, Ryder,
there's no
ground to make up here between the two of us because we agreed on all 4 picks. First, I'd like for the record to show that I did put my picks down first, but you copied me. It's all right. As far as the Purdue Notre Dame game,
I took 3 different picks. The only one I took with you guys was Wisconsin. I'm just on a totally different page.
Well, what probably happened, if we're being honest, I probably put my picks down. Reiner probably put his down. And then Tony saw that we had the same picks and was like, "Oh, I'll do it different on these ones so I could have a chance to win."
I was second. I put them down. Really, part of me wanted to not be different. I was about to go the same because I don't want to lose any ground. You know what I mean? We take these picks very seriously. It's really the highlight.
We
of the
all
show.
Enter week 4 at 5-4, 5-4.
To my credit, I did explain with deep analysis why I picked each of these games. So
you did, and there are only 2 options, right? It's not like we have 10 teams to pick from. It's Team A or Team B. So all right, we will see how big of a. Go ahead, Andrew.
I just think Purdue is lost right now. Notre Dame is a little lost right now, and I think Purdue is going to be fired up for that game. Stadium on fire, really, and they're coming off the bye. Early bye, which usually backfires late in the year, but can help you early in the year. So, yeah, there's my Purdue analysis to interrupt you before the closing of the show.
Well, spoiler makers.
They are called that for a reason. Been some time. I hope for my sake it's not this week when that moniker returns. Thought of the word that I needed there. All right, that'll do it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this long. Hope you had fun. We know we did. Also, got to give a few other thanks to our editor-in-chief, Nicole Avery-Nichols, to our audio engineer, Robin Chan. Everybody, if you're still here, it means you like us at least a little bit. So rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, your family. Football season's here. We're having fun. We're doing the damn thing. So do it with us. Thanks again. For Andrew, for Reiner, I'm Tony. This is Hail Yes.